You breathe deep, fade the room to twilight, and let imagination stretch its legs. Subscribe, ring that bell, and we'll step through the following gate together. You draw the blanket up to your chin, let the fan purr like distant Nile water, and tiptoe with me through one more half-lit doorway. Tap subscribe, ring the bell only if the stories feel like home, and before sleep steals your voice, whisper where in the world your clock is glowing. The strange comfort, mapping a constellation of night listeners. Tonight we drift south, where the ancients built stone libraries of desire and never pretended they were forbidden. To an Egyptian, sex sat beside sunrise and floodwater, essential plumbing for the universe. No furtive giggles behind curtains, no vocabulary gymnastics. The gods did it, the peasants did it, the nobility penciled it between audits of barley. Harmony, Ma'at, meant every force moved in balance, and fertility was the heartbeat of that balance. If the bedroom was happy, the granaries stayed full. If not, perhaps Hathor deserved a candle and a drizzle of honey. Temples flaunted carvings of divine lovers. Poems compared kisses to beer that drunkens the heart. Architects even tucked intimate chambers away from grain bins because passion, like grain, needs its own silo. Celibacy crusades? Zero. Social scorecards based on linen whiteness, land plots, and whether you kept the household gods fed, yes. But what you did under linen sheets, that was cooperation with the cosmos, not a court case. Blame, no thank, the gods for setting the mood. Creation itself began with Adam, the ultimate solo artist. According to the Heliopolitan hymn, he coaxed existence from an act of fiercely focused self-love, releasing Shu, air, and Tefnut, moisture, in one cosmic gesture. No fig leaves, no throat clearing. Power and pleasure fused at Genesis. Embarrassment never got an invitation. Fast forward to Egypt's power couple, Osiris and Isis. When jealous Set hacked Osiris into grisly puzzle pieces, Isis gathered every fragment except one. Undeterred, she fashioned a substitute phallus, reanimated her husband long enough to conceive Horus, and kept the royal bloodline flowing. Devotion, ingenuity, immaculate time management. Then there's Min, Lord of Potency, eternally poised with lettuce in one hand and unmistakable confidence in the other. Priests offered crisp greens as divine performance fuel, and farmers pinned hopes for bumper harvests on that upraised blessing. Hathor, queen of music, laughter, and liquid courage, danced through festivals in diaphanous linen, turning riverbanks into dating apps with drums. Even solemn Ra birthed creation through words or an artful spit, proving the sun itself wasn't above unconventional methods. When gods treat intimacy as sacred workmanship, mortals follow suit. Ordinary Egyptians carved out private corners between feeding goats and dodging hippos. Marriage contracts spelled obligations, linen, oil, affection, but rarely policed desire. Property disputes or adultery that threatened inheritance drew legal fire. Consensual pleasure didn't. Your worth hinged on harvest tallies and how brightly your linen shone in the courtyard sun, not on who shared your bedroll. Healthy passion equaled cosmic approval. A faltering love life? Maybe a ritual bath scented with lotus or a honey wine tonic muttered over Hathor's name. Medical papyri list remedies equal parts science and sympathetic magic. Dates, garlic, powdered turquoise. Love's pharmacy stocked for every budget. Even architecture whispered permission. Modest mud-brick homes hid alcoves behind reed mats. Wealthier villas featured rooftop rooms where cool night breezes tangled with laughter. Artists painted fertility emblems, figs, fish, blooming papyrus on everyday pottery. Scribes etched cheeky verses, "My heart longs to lie with you like the garden lotus at dawn." No secret diaries needed. Desire was part of the public record. And yet Egyptians weren't libertines. They prized balance over excess, reciprocity over conquest. The same culture that celebrated Hathor's revels also honored Ma'at, the featherlight principle of order. Abuse, coercion, or theft of affection threatened that order and invited both human courts and divine audits. Freedom sang, but always in tune. Picture it as you drift. Moonlight silvering the Nile, a couple laughing on a rooftop, a priestess lighting incense beside Min's lettuce, a farmer raising a cup to Adam's audacious dawn. In the distance, Temple walls glow with carvings. Isis cradling Osiris, Ra shaping worlds with breath. No blushes, no broken hush. Just life, looping from desire to harvest and back again. Breathe with that rhythm. Feel honey on the tongue, papyrus rustling like soft sighs. River reeds swaying to unseen drums. Let the lesson settle. Shame was never universal. Sometimes humanity wrote its earliest love letters in stone and called them sacred. If your eyelids are still brave, type your city and the hour. If they're folding, let the last ember be this. Even the harshest desert blooms where passion and balance meet. Rest. Tomorrow the jackal-headed dawn will guard new secrets, and we'll set our boat on the current again. You shift deeper into your pillow, the fan still humming Nile soft, and let tonight's lantern glow a little brighter. Because everyday love in ancient Egypt was steady, practical, and sprinkled with just enough poetry to keep the heart awake. Picture dawn over mud brick rooftops. A potter stoking his kiln, a linen weaver shaking out bleached cloth, a farmer testing the river mud between expert fingers. Romance followed the same rhythm. Who lived 3 doors down, who brewed beer that actually tasted like dates, who miraculously kept a full smile after 30 harvests. Partnerships formed where chores overlapped, children scampered, and affection hid in plain sight. Lovers scratched sweet nothings on broken pottery, ostraca, and slipped them into baskets. I dream of your beauty at night. Ancient texting, baked and durable. Sex wasn't policed by priests brandishing guilt. So long as everyone consented and nobody trampled a marriage contract, the state kept its papyrus out of the bedroom. Privacy, thin walls, nosy neighbors, eternal gossip. But intimacy was respected. 2 murals freeze couples face to face, fingers intertwined. No stiff ceremonial pose. They wanted eternity to see tenderness, not just titles. Timing mattered. Just as farmers studied the flood calendar, families tracked fertility. Grandmothers dispensed unsolicited onion and honey remedies. Women read their cycles. Men swigged herbal tonics. Contraceptive recipes? Crocodile dung was not a bestseller, but honey and acacia made regular rounds. Pregnancy tests? Barley and emmer seeds watered with morning urine. Sprout equals cradle. No sprout equals patience. Midwives kept their own toolkits of oil, spells, and years of hard-won calm. When love soured, divorce was pragmatic. No courtroom theatrics, just a property split and 2 people returning to separate bread ovens. Children and goats tallied, linen counted, farewell loaf shared. Life went on. Chores didn't pause for heartbreak. Weddings? Delightfully low maintenance. 2 adults decided to share a roof, said so, and moved in. That was marriage. No priests chanting. No feast so huge it bankrupted the bride's uncle. Garments stayed the same, everyday white linen, cool, pleated, practical. The real badge of union was a shared bed and common pantry shelves. Later centuries introduced written contracts. Early prenups carving out who brought what and penalties for bad behavior. Strike me and pay in silver. Romantic? Maybe not. Effective? Absolutely. Egypt surprised outsiders with women's legal clout. A wife could own land, sue an ex-husband, or walk away first if things turned sour. Love might be blind, but Egyptian law squinted hard. Fidelity shimmered as an ideal. Scribes praised loyal hearts in hymns, but reality flexed. For ordinary folks, cheating dented reputation more than it triggered the police. Snickers, snide songs, maybe a breakup. Yet a married woman's affair risked harsher fallout. Inheritance tangles, paternity doubts, social frostbite. Elite households guarded honor like grain stores. Rumors could fracture alliances faster than a failed flood. Men? They enjoyed wider lanes. A husband dallying with an unmarried woman sparked shrugs. Pair him with another man's wife and sparks turned to spears. Especially if that husband had muscle, money, or cousins who sharpened bronze at dawn. Jealousy was not a modern invention. Texts from the New Kingdom wag a moral finger. Do not walk with a woman married to another. The river knows how to drown secrets. Still, people gambled. Humans remain predictable across millennia. Let the images settle as you drift. Night on a flat rooftop, 2 figures sharing bread. The the city around them humming like crickets in mud walls. A wife slipping an ostrakhan beneath a loaf. A husband grinning at barley that sprouted overnight. A couple parting calmly, dividing geese and thank you baskets. An old midwife muttering a spell as she knots a red cord. A scribe composing a cautionary verse about wandering eyes while definitely planning to wander. Breathe with that rhythm. Flood, seed, harvest. Meeting, loving, growing, parting. Egyptians didn't hide desire. They folded it into life like yeast into dough. Shame never fed the granaries, so they left it out of the recipe. If you're still awake, tap your city and the hour. It's a comfort charting our quiet flotilla of night thinkers. If sleep is tugging, let the last ember glow. Balance was their compass. Love walked alongside labor, fidelity alongside flexibility, poetry alongside pottery shards. Rest easy. The Nile will rise again, chores will wait, and tomorrow we'll sail to another sandy horizon where history keeps its heartbeat warm for us. You sink a little further under the covers. The fans hush folding over you like Nile mist, and let tonight's tale tilt toward the slightly scandalous. Reputation in ancient Egypt mattered almost as much as the flood calendar, and gossip was cheaper than papyrus. Adultery? Officially frowned upon, but more often policed by side-eye and snarky hymns than by courtroom drama. Scribes loved a moral fable. The man who slips into another's house will end his days limp as a reed. Jackal-headed gods, impotence curses. Those warnings echoed loud enough to make second thoughts louder. Yet for most villagers, a wandering heart triggered whispers rather than whips. If no dowry, inheritance, or goat count was jeopardized, the authorities stayed out of the bedroom. A wife caught straying risked sharper fallout. Social frost, divorce, maybe a bruised reputation that stuck like mud after flood season. Husbands enjoyed wider lanes. A fling with an unmarried woman drew shrugs. Courting a married neighbor could summon angry brothers sharpening bronze at dawn. Jealousy, it seems, is as old as bread ovens. Should vows crack, divorce unfolded like any other household chore, methodical and mercifully quick. Property split, bread ovens divided. Neighbors pretending not to peek while tallying who kept the cat. Children, especially little ones, usually stayed beside their mother's loom. No public stocks, no fire and brimstone sermons, just 2 new doorways and a community adjusting its gossip map. Now, about those royal family trees that look suspiciously like wreaths. Pharaohs marrying full sisters sounds like a bad riddle, yet inside palace walls it was political common sense. If your lineage claims literal descent from gods, you protect that divinity the way priests protect sacred scrolls. Keep it in-house. Divine blood diluted by outsiders? Unthinkable. So kings wed sisters or half-sisters to seal power and keep land, treasure, and cosmic legitimacy locked in a single lineage. Tutankhamun himself was the fragile proof. DNA shows his parents were siblings, and his skeletal troubles hint at the price of a closed loop. Common farmers didn't copy this elite quirk. Villagers chose spouses from the next hamlet, not the next bedroom. Even among nobles, cousin matches were safer bets. Cleopatra followed tradition on parchment, wedding 2 younger brothers to secure the throne. Yet she steered real authority alone and later turned her gaze toward Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, men blissfully outside the gene pool. Royal incest was ritual, not romance. A dynastic seatbelt, however flawed. Slide from politics to parchment and you'll meet Egypt's cheekier side. Most temple reliefs show serene gods and stiff pharaohs, but every rule invites an exception. And the Turin erotic papyrus is that exception in blazing, unfiltered color. Drawn around 1150 BCE, it parades acrobatic couples, exaggerated anatomy, even a scene where balance implies either advanced yoga or monumental bravado atop an amphora. Scholars argue, body party favor? Satire of fertility cults? Either way, the artist left nothing to guesswork. Elsewhere, erotic themes stayed symbolic. Fertility deities, Min perpetually standing tall, Hathor dancing in diaphanous linen, broadcast creative energy without tipping into explicitness. Marginal sketches tucked in administrative scrolls reveal animals behaving like tipsy villagers, exaggerated lovers with hopelessly large wigs, visual puns that say, We can be devout and still laugh at ourselves. Art was freedom to wink at the sacred. One ostracon shows a hippo playing a lute while tiny mice serve wine. Humorous? Yes, but also a reminder that life's pleasures, music, drink, desire, were never far from daily toil. Egyptians knew balance. Reverence by daylight, jokes by torchlight. So drift with these images. A discreet affair whispered into Nile breezes. A divorce settled with a handshake and a new bread schedule. A pharaoh's wedding doubling as a closed-circuit board meeting, and an artist somewhere in Deir el-Medina chuckling while painting a scene too wild for temple walls. Feel the weight of a culture that managed paradox with grace. Sacred yet sensual, orderly yet playful, practical yet willing to laugh at cosmic plumbing. Your eyelids grow warm. Let gossip fade into river lullabies. Remember, in this ancient land, shame rarely tilled fields or filled granaries. Balance did. Sleep under that balance now. Tomorrow, another door creaks open, another story waits, and the Nile will still be murmuring outside the dream. You pull the blanket a notch higher, matching the fan's pulse, and let the candle glow of Egypt settle behind your eyelids. Out on a limestone worksite, a board mason is scratching a tiny scene onto an ostracon, an off-duty doodle that would make pharaoh's priests sputter into their incense. Erotic sketches, flirty stick figures, even a goose wearing too much eyeliner. Proof that ancient foremen faced the same stop daydreaming problem modern managers do. To the Egyptians, sex was simply another pigment on the artist's palette, sometimes sacred, sometimes hilarious, always part of the picture. Drift forward a few centuries to a riverside bungalow outside Thebes, and you'll hear soft rustling, papyrus, not palm fronds. Love poems of the New Kingdom, circa 1300 BCE, pop with mischief and warmth. A young woman narrates her own scheme. I'll fake sickness so you visit. Your voice alone is my cure. That's a 3000-year-old text message, complete with the slow blink emoji hidden in hieroglyphic eyes. Men answer back with comparisons only an agrarian heart could craft. Her words taste better than fresh beer. Her step ripples the lotus pond. These verses weren't locked in diaries. They were sung at dinner parties, recited between harp solos, used to close the gap between strangers sharing figs. Desire wasn't a confession. It was entertainment. When metaphors loosened, they reached for orchards and hunting grounds. Pomegranates burst with promise. The chase of an antelope mirrored the chase of a wary smile. Gardens and canals? Rarely about irrigation. The Egyptians turned the world outside their windows into one big wink, trusting listeners to catch the double bloom behind every blossom. Speaking of winks, picture a festival in honor of the fertility god. Min priests shuffle forward with armfuls of crisp, upright romaine lettuce, latex white sap beating where the stalks are cut. The symbolism is neither subtle nor accidental. Min stands carved in alabaster, unmistakably potent, grasping lettuce in one hand and anatomical confidence in the other. Worshippers leave leafy bundles at his feet, hoping for robust crops, easy pregnancies, or a livelier bedroom. Call it the original eat your greens. Modern science can debate the phytonutrients. Ancient hearts believe the message. Vitality rises from the soil, and so can you. Not everyone sought beginnings. Some couples pressed pause. Egyptian medicine rolled out a surprisingly creative contraceptive menu. Herbs, acacia honey, powdered crocodile dung. Yes, really, mixed into pessaries. A little alarming? Certainly. Yet the logic was empirical. Observe cycles, test plants, listen to midwives. The Kahin gynecological papyrus lists recipes to unwind conception, long before anyone dreamed of latex. Midwives also staged peon barley pregnancy tests. If the grain sprouted, congratulations. If not, circle back next flood season. Science has since nodded. Hormones can influence seed germination, meaning grandma's folk wisdom held a whisper of lab truth. Social rules about fidelity floated somewhere between flexible and firm. A wandering spouse faced gossip more than gavel, but reputations mattered like irrigation ditches. Once breached, hard to mend. Poets warned that the man who slips into another's bed will wilt like a reed cut from the marsh, a metaphor that needed no physician to decode. Women bore heavier costs if found straying. Inheritance lines and field boundaries rested on certain paternities, but legal tablets rarely sentenced them to death. More often, a public shaming, a swift divorce, and 2 new loaves baking in separate ovens. Children, especially toddlers, stayed with their mother. Community eyes pretended to avert while ears absorbed every detail for tomorrow's marketplace buzz. Meanwhile, in palaces rimmed with blue faience tiles, sibling marriage kept dynastic blood in a golden loop. Modern stomachs flip, ancient courtiers shrugged. If gods married their sisters to preserve Marat, why should Pharaoh let the divine genome leak into lesser lineages? Tutankhamun's fragile bones warn what happens when genetics run in circles. But at the time, purity trumped variety. Commoners watched from their mud-brick porches, happily choosing partners from the next village. Second cousins at closest, thank you very much. Back to art, and the notorious Turin erotic papyrus struts into view. Imagine a scribe after too much festival wine deciding the world needs a visual playlist of positions, amphiacrobatics included. Scholars still debate whether it's satire, smut, or an inside joke between draftsmen. What matters is its existence. Proof that even in a culture of poised profiles, someone snuck a grin past the border guards of propriety. Yet most temple walls stay dignified. Hathor strumming a lute, Isis nursing divine royalty, Min eternally upright beneath a canopy of stars. Sensuality is presented with straight-backed reverence. Humor blooms in the margins. A baboon pouring beer for a mouse, a hippo plucking a harp. Life, the artists say, is large enough to hold piety and play in the same frame. Let that notion rock you toward sleep. A civilization where love notes ride pottery shards, lettuce doubles as a pickup line, and contraception involves both honey and daring. The Nile keeps rhythm. Flood, plant, harvest, rest, while hearts improvise on top, trusting balance to hold. You can feel it, can't you? The sense that desire, laughter, devotion, and practical know-how can coexist without shame. Breathe in Nile night air. Sweet, a little earthy, humming with frogs. Breathe out the modern clutter. Somewhere a potter etches a last secret verse before firing the jar. Somewhere a midwife checks sprouting barley and smiles. History isn't blushing, it's winking. Close your eyes on that wink. I'll bank the lamplight and keep the stories warm for tomorrow's drift downstream. You let the fans hum slip into the background and picture an ebony night on the Nile. Stars so bright they feel like quiet applause. In a reed-roofed bedroom, an elderly midwife crushes acacia gum, mixes it with honey, dates, and a whisper of palm fiber. The paste cools in a shallow dish. Tomorrow it will become an early pessary, slipped into place with the same steady hands that once eased half the village into daylight. Later medicine will learn that acacia ferments into lactic acid, a gentle, organic shield against conception, but tonight no one calls it science. It's simply knowledge passed from aunt to niece, inked in memory long before papyrus. A flash sideways. Another recipe. This one scribbled in the Ebers Papyrus, 1550 BCE. Crocodile dung, sourdough, and honey mashed to a thick plug. You wrinkle your nose, the soporific air suddenly sharp with curiosity. Unpleasant? Absolutely. Illogical? Not entirely. The mixture is acidic, bulky, a crude barrier. You can almost hear the women laughing at the smell while insisting. Better a little stink than another mouth while the barley runs thin. Agency here is homemade, herbal, and fearless. Egyptian women, remember, owned property, sued ex-husbands, even drafted their own prenups. That same confidence marched into the herb garden. Need to encourage menstruation? Brew a tea of frankincense and beer foam. Suspect of pregnancy? Soak barley on one side of a jar, emmer on the other, pour your morning urine, and wait. If barley sprouts, brace for a boy. If emmer greens first, plan for a daughter. If nothing grows, perhaps the goddess Hathor has postponed your parenthood. Modern lab tests reveal hormones can nudge seeds to life. Proof that intuition sometimes outruns microscopes. All of this unfolds in a culture refreshingly chill about virginity. No white linen tests. No temple scrolls tallying innocence. There isn't even a word for virgin in the moral sense. Just terms for young, or uninitiated. Your worth rests on thrift, kindness, maybe how deftly you weave flax, not on whether you've kissed anyone beneath a sycamore. A first encounter is noted with a shrug. What matters is loyalty once promises are made. Bread burns the same whether you're chaste or not. And roof beams don't care about past kisses while you patch them before the next sandstorm. Shift focus to fidelity. Adultery, for average folk, sits in the court of gossip rather than the court of law. A wandering spouse risks satire verses and side-eye at market stalls, not public stoning. Reputation carries weight like a crocodile's tail, heavy, slow to lift once it drags. For married women, stakes run higher. Inheritance lines must stay clear as the desert horizon. Yet legal tablets rarely prescribe death, divorce, property division, and brisk relocation of bread ovens do most of the cleanup. Children, especially the young, remain with their mother, while neighbors pretend they're not eavesdropping through mud brick walls. Meanwhile, palace walls echo a different rhythm. Royal blood, convinced it drips straight from deities, curls back on itself. Brother marries sister to keep the divine serum undiluted. Tutankhamun's fragile skeleton later whispers warnings about closed gene pools, but in his lifetime the logic feels unbreakable. Gods pair with siblings, so must the God King. Commoners watch the gilded wedding barges glide by and mutter, "Let them keep their miracles. We'll keep our variety." And what of love that doesn't follow the usual script? In a 5th dynasty mastaba, 2 high priests, Nyanknum and Khnumhotep, rest nose to nose, arms entangled, surrounded by scenes typically reserved for husband and wife. No judge chiseled their bond off the wall. Scribes copied their names, workers sealed their tomb, and time moved on with barely a raised eyebrow. There is no surviving decree against same-sex unions, no frantic hymns warning of doom. The Egyptians noted, shrugged, and let the Nile keep flowing. When desire sparked outside expected lines, the main caution was discretion, because gossip, not doctrine, was the sharper blade. Even the entertainment scribes understood this latitude. One day a bored artist inks a risque sketch on a limestone flake, a lion pouring wine for a goose in lipstick, or 2 lovers balanced acrobatically atop an amphora. Are these jokes? Private commissions? None of the above? The point is they exist, tucked between lists of grain deliveries and laundry tallies, proving that humor and heat lived beside bureaucracy. Let that montage settle behind your eyelids. Acacia paste cooling like caramel, barley seeds sprouting or sulking in clay jars. A girl rolling her eyes at an uncle's virtue lecture because there isn't one. 2 priests sharing eternity without apology. A palace scribe doodling a prank the curator will blush over 3,000 years later. Sex in ancient Egypt was not a scandal to be hushed. It was a tool to plan with, a joy to sing about, a mystery to respect, and sometimes a joke worth snickering at during lunch break. Breathe deep. The night air tastes of warm stone and lotus. Exhale. The fan's rhythm meets the Nile's ghostly lap. Tomorrow, chores resume. Nets to mend, contracts to negotiate. Maybe another love note scratched onto a potsherd and slipped into a basket of figs. For now, close your eyes on a world that balanced fertility and freedom with herbs, wit, and an impressively steady hand. I'll keep the lamp low and the stories true, ready for the next tide of dreams. You breathe with the fan, let the room dim to a Nile blue hush, and picture a limestone mastaba half sunk in Saqqara sand. Inside, torchlight glides over 2 officials, Nyanknum and Khnumhotep, nose to nose, fingers twined like roots of the same papyrus stalk. The wall scenes show them sharing a banquet table, embracing before fragrant offering piles, even greeting one another with the nose kiss reserved for spouses. Scribal titles call them overseers of the royal manicurists, but the art insists on something deeper. 1 household, 1 heart, eternity signed in ochre. Were they brothers? Lovers? Both? The stone won't confess. It only tells you no priest chiseled their love away. Respect, not outrage, sealed their tomb. Drift deeper. In Egyptian myth, boundaries melt like candle wax. Happy, Lord of the Nile's flood, is painted with full breasts and a gently rounded belly, both father and mother of abundance. The lion-headed Sekhmet can soften into the pleasure goddess Hathor after a cup, or 6, of beer. Gender bends, shifts, reforms, and the gods shrug. Creation works best without rigid boxes. That divine flexibility trickles down. Scribes never drafted laws against men loving men, nor scrolls damning women for finding tenderness in one another's arms. Intimacy was judged more by harmony, marat, than by the arrangement of bodies. But harmony frays when hoped for children never arrive. You see a couple lit by rush torches consulting the Kahan papyrus. The healer examines cervical fluid, marks lunar cycles, then brews a potion. Ground dates, carob, a swirl of honey, sweetness coaxing life. If seeds fail to sprout in the barley emmer urine test, amulets take over. A faience hippo goddess, Tarit, stands guard on the bedpost. A tiny bronze bess grimaces from the dresser to scare away spiteful spirits. Medicine and magic trade verses like duet partners, one measuring pulses, the other whispering charms. Acacia gum, you recall, ferments into lactic acid. Modern labs nod approvingly at its mild spermicidal bite. The crocodile dung pessary? Less applause, more grimace. Yet even that recipe carries a fierce logic. Create a barrier, tip the body's chemistry, keep choice alive under linen sheets. Egyptian women walked the marketplace with legal identities, property rights, and enough botanical savvy to steer their own fertility. Agency tasted of date honey and dusted fingertips. Virginity? Hardly a headline. No hieroglyph singles it out. No linens are paraded for proof. A person's worth rides on thrift, good harvests, and how well they honor household gods. Not on what they have, or have not, done beneath a sycamore. Modesty exists, but obsession doesn't. Desire is a normal Nile flood. Expected, occasionally messy, always essential. Of course, fidelity matters, chiefly because inheritance lines must run clear. When a married woman strays, gossip can cut as sharply as a copper razor. Divorce is swift, property tallied, children usually nest with their mother, bread ovens divided like spoils of a peaceful war. A husband who wanders with an unmarried woman earns eye rolls. One who tangles with another man's wife invites curses, fistfights, and poetic shade scrawled on pot shards. Yet stoning? No. Execution? Rare. Social balance resets through reputation, not tribunals. Shift again, this time to a royal palace draped in lapis and incense. Here, bloodlines coil inward. Sibling marries sibling to keep the gods' DNA neat. Tutankhamun's fragile bones whisper of the risks, but for pharaohs the logic is cosmic, not genetic. Divine essence must remain undiluted, even if the family tree looks more like a wreath. Outside palace walls, commoners marry for practical alchemy. 2 loaves, 1 roof, shared laughter at goat-level chaos. No white gowns, no priests. Agreement and a house key are ceremony enough. Love notes appear on pottery shards. I dream of your voice like cool water. Ancient texting, delivered in grain sacks. Now ease into the afterlife, where need does not rust. Tomb inscriptions petition Osiris to restore every limb, and yes, the pleasant ones too, so that couples may make love like they did on earth. Scenes of husbands and wives touching, hands entwined over offerings, aren't just sweet decor. They are blueprints instructing gods to reinflate desire when the ka awakes. Without sensual joy, eternity would taste like stale barley bread. No thanks. Feel the candle stub in your room shorten as you imagine funerary priests placing carved lettuce stalks. Mince potent vegetable. Among grave goods, lettuce stands tall, bleeds milky sap. The symbolism is, shall we say, vigorous. Even in death, a little cosmic Viagra can't hurt. And humor follows everywhere. On a limestone flake, a quick sketch artist doodles a goose wearing coal, fanning a naked lion sprawled on a couch. Porn? Parody? Both. The limestone slips into a worker's pocket, 3,000 years later into a museum drawer, and now into your half-dreaming mind. A reminder that even pyramid builders needed a laugh. Breathe one last time with the Nile wind. Warm, fertile, indifferent to rules scribbled centuries later. Egyptians planned births with seeds and spells, accepted love in many shapes, and packed pleasure for the trip beyond the western horizon. Let that widen your chest as sleep settles. Tomorrow the gods will rise with the sun and the midwife will test her barley again. For tonight, Rest knowing that long before you, humans balanced duty and desire with herbs, jokes, and a startling lack of shame, and somehow kept the river of life flowing true. You taste smoke before you see the flames, heavy, oily, drifting across a humid August night. It is August 24th, 1814, and Washington City, the fresh-painted symbol of a teenage republic, glows the color of molten copper. British Marines stroll the broad avenues almost lazily, torches in hand, as if judging a county fair rather than gutting another nation's capital. The Capitol dome crackles, the Treasury bellows sparks, the War Office windows shatter in little eruptions of glass, and the President's mansion, still months away from the nickname White House, roars like a kiln. Step back 2 years. America, shoulders squared in borrowed confidence, declares war on Great Britain in the summer of 1812. Politicians promise a swift march into Canada, quick glory, and global respect. They picture maple forests echoing with Yankee anthems, British redcoats surrendering politely, Europe barely noticing. Reality answers with mud, mosquitoes, and embarrassment. 3 invasions north stagger, stall, and retreat. Militias melt away. Generals quarrel. A few sharp American naval victories shimmer like coins in the mud, but on land, the young republic keeps tripping over its own enthusiasm. Inside Congress, the nation is a quarrel dressed as a union. New England merchants hiss that the war bleeds commerce dry. Western hawks demand more blood, more honor, more land. Supplies run thin, strategy thinner. And across the Atlantic, Britain, tied up fighting Napoleon, writes a rain check. Busy now, collect later. Then winter 1814 cracks, Napoleon bows at Fontainebleau, and Britain suddenly has seasoned regiments with nothing to do. Veterans who marched from Lisbon to Leipzig now board transports for the Chesapeake, itching to teach a lesson to the continent's noisy apprentice. Their orders are part retribution, part demonstration. Hit the Potomac where it hurts, torch symbols, rattle the American psyche until every farmstead hears the echo. You feel the consequences in late August as Admiral Coburn's fleet glides up the winding river, landing troops at Benedict, Maryland. American defenders scramble, miscommunicate, panic. At Bladensburg, a creek fringed with buckthorn, the militia breaks under rocket fire and bayonet pressure. President Madison watches the rout, then gallops south, dust swirling like shame around horse hooves. Washington lies open, heartbeat exposed. Night falls. British officers dine in the House chamber, toasting King George amid charred papers. Torches kiss the Library of Congress. Books pop and hiss. The Capitol's sandstone turns peach under heat. A thunderstorm rolls in, drenching redcoats, bucketing water onto ember-strewn avenues. Lightning splitting the sky like divine commentary. Some swear the storm saves what little survives. Others call it nature's applause. Either way, by dawn the city is a skeleton of blackened timbers and sullen brick. Humiliation ripples outward. Newspapers from London to Lisbon smirk. The brash republic couldn't protect its own doorstep. American morale plummets. Recruitment posters wilt. Yet bruises can stiffen resolve. Baltimore braces for siege. New Orleans rallies behind a sharp-jawed Tennessee general. And diplomats in Ghent quietly inch toward peace terms neither side truly loves, but both can abide. Let the smoke settle in your mind as you drift. A capital city charred before it fully claimed its voice. Politicians nursing singed pride. British veterans sailing home with souvenirs of marble rubble. History rarely punishes overconfidence so theatrically. Yet, in the emberglow, the United States learns an aching lesson about hubris, unity, and the price of underestimating an enemy with time to spare. Breathe once, feel the heat fade, and remember, sometimes a nation grows not from easy victories, but from the scorch marks it vows never to repeat. You taste ashes on the humid night air long before you see the orange glow on the horizon. And your pulse stutters, because the line between rumor and ruin has just snapped. It is August 24th, 1814. Washington City, adolescent capital of a country still learning how to lace its own boots, waits behind you like a naive younger sibling. Out in front, 4,500 British veterans stride inland from Benedict, Maryland, boots crunching dry tobacco stalks, their redcoats dark as dried blood in the moonlight. They have marched across half of Europe chasing Napoleon. A few extra miles toward the Potomac feels like stretching after supper. How did it come to this? You rewind the reel. For 2 fever-bright years, America bragged that the War of 1812 would be a fireside story about conquered Canada and humbled Britain. Instead, each northern foray dissolved into mudslick panic, militia deserters, and icy river crossings that tasted of hubris. While congressmen thundered, states quarreled, and supplies evaporated, London merely circled a date on the calendar. Deal with the Americans after we finish the Corsican. Now Napoleon is in exile. The empire has free hands, and the hands are closing into fists. Major General Robert Ross, calm and deadly as a scalpel, leads the column. Rear Admiral George Cockburn, eyes glittering with payback for every Yankee cartoon that mocked him, coordinates the choreography from the river. Washington's defenders? A patchwork of startled regulars, stumbling militia, and horsehair-stuffed confidence commanded by Brigadier General William Winder, an officer better at committees than combat. At Bladensburg Creek, the two sides collide. You feel the sun hammer your shoulders. Hear Congreve rockets hiss overhead like angry cats. Militiamen break before their muskets grow warm. Some fling weapons into the brush as though the steel itself has betrayed them. President Madison, who rode out to witness valor, sees only dust-plumed retreat and chooses discretion over martyrdom. The battle lasts little longer than a sermon. Historians later dub it the Bladensburg races, because no foot race starts quicker than panic. The road to the capital lies yawning and unscarred. Ross could almost whistle as he advances. At dusk, the British crest Capitol Hill. Washington's grand marble embryo, half-finished wings, bamboo scaffolds still clinging to columns, towers like a dare. Soldiers file inside, stack furniture, newspapers, and timber into neat pyres. Flames roar upward, licking frescoes and melting the ink of infant legislation. The Library of Congress follows, thousands of volumes curling into black petals. Knowledge, it seems, burns at the same temperature as anything else. Across town, the presidential mansion stands silent, tables set for guests who will never arrive. First Lady Dolly Madison has already bundled silver, state papers, and that stern portrait of George Washington into wagons rumbling toward Virginia. British officers enter, blink at the still steaming roast and decanters of wine, then sit to dine by candelabra light, eating the Republic's supper before striking tinderboxes along wainscoting. Outside, Cockburn saunters to the National Intelligencer's press room, keeps type blocks in the street, and orders them smashed so the editors can have no further occasion to abuse His Majesty's officers. Vengeance, but executed with a solicitor's precision. Midnight, heat shivers off shattered windows. Rooftops crack like musketry. Then the heavens answer. A hurricane-scale thunderstorm barrels over the Potomac, hurling sheets of water into the inferno. Some Americans later swear the deluge is divine mercy. Some British mutter it's the devil defending his investment. Lightning forks against smoke columns, revealing for split seconds the skeleton of the Capitol dome, charred ribs against a convulsing sky. By dawn, the redcoats are already marching back toward their barges. Mission complete. They have lost fewer than 100 men. Behind them, Washington steams like a spent forge. The Treasury roof gone, War Department a husk, streets littered with warped coins and cracked marble. The shockwave races outward, into mortified newspapers, across dinner tables from Boston to Savannah, into the marrow of a republic suddenly aware that declarations and bravado do not substitute for readiness. But humiliation can be alchemy. Baltimore, warned by the smoke, fortifies. Kentucky riflemen hurry east. Andrew Jackson sharpens plans in the Mississippi Delta. And in Belgium, peace commissioners begin drafting clauses with a new urgency. The city that smolders tonight will, within a generation, gleam under white paint, the scars hidden but never forgotten. Breathe out the smoke. Feel how overconfidence kindles. Indecision fans, and disciplined resentment strikes like flint. History keeps the ember glowing so you and I, comfortable in quieter centuries, remember the taste of that hot night and vow not to repeat its recipe. You smell gunpowder and wet plaster before you notice the shine of bayonets outside the window, Washington's nightmare still unfolding in the blue heat of late August 1814. For 2 days the redcoats move through the capital like surgeons performing vengeance. First the Treasury, ledgers and letters curling into black lace. Next, the War Department, powder stores popping like infernal popcorn. Then the Navy Yard, the arsenal, even the long wooden bridge over the Potomac, kindling lit to bar any counter-thrust that will never come. Every torch is placed with purpose. This is humiliation, not conquest. Yet amid the crackle you witness odd mercies. Dr. William Thornton, Patent Office chief and silver-tongued idealist, intercepts a British detachment, pleading that his building shelters the mind of mankind, not merely the paperwork of one upstart republic. The officers nod, the matchbooks close. A single library of invention survives, an organ spared in an otherwise thorough autopsy. Night closes, smoke climbs, and suddenly the sky shifts. Clouds roll in as if summoned by the same drums that brought the invaders. Wind punches down Pennsylvania Avenue, ripping shingles loose. Lightning forks, then the heavens append. Rain like hurled gravel, whole sheets of water slamming the city, dousing greedy flames. Bewildered British grenadiers wrestle flapping tent cloth while cannons, yes, actual six-pounders, lift clear of the ground under a gale that feels biblical. Someone shouts that God has changed sides. And then, impossible, a funnel of rotating dust and debris roars straight through the city's wounded heart. A tornado. Redcoats and refugees alike dive for gutters as carts somersault, chimney brick spin, and one unlucky soldier meets a flying beam head-on. When the whirlwind passes, roofs are gone, walls collapsed, but half the fires lie drowned beneath ankle-deep torrents. In taverns, rattled survivors whisper that Providence turned weather into a fire brigade because Congress could not. Ross and Cockburn, boots still dripping, interpret the omen their own way. Objective achieved, hubris invited. At dawn they march out, boots squelching, leaving stinking timbers and stunned silence behind. Washington streets steam like a battlefield after the guns fall silent, and the real siege begins. The one inside American morale. Within hours, the debate ignites hotter than the ruins. Should the capital move? Philadelphia offers dignity. New York offers money. Baltimore at least owns cannons that face the right direction. Many congressmen quietly pack trunks, certain the Potomac experiment has failed. But James Madison, slight and stubborn, rides back into the smoke. Beside him, Dolly, fresh from rescuing Washington's portrait, refuses mourning clothes. She chooses bright silk as if to say the color will return or she will paint it herself. They insist the city will stand where the Constitution planted it. Swamp or no swamp. Congress convenes in borrowed rooms, a wing of the Patent Office first, then a hastily erected brick warehouse locals nickname the Old Brick Capitol. Rain leaks through gaps. Legislators write appropriations beneath umbrellas. Money is scarce, morale scarcer, but petitions still arrive by horseback. Merchants, masons, and free black laborers offering timber, stone, muscle, pride. Reconstruction becomes a collective vow, a promise that the matchbook cannot have the last word. Slowly frames rise from charcoal lots. Irish stonemasons set marble blocks under autumn suns. Enslaved carpenters plane new beams for a mansion that will soon be coated in whitewash bright enough to hide scorch scars. Baltimore, forged by urgency, throws up ramparts and waits for the Empire's sequel. Across swamps and valleys, riflemen answer the call, including a lean Tennessean named Jackson who believes redemption smells like gunpowder and Spanish moss. Far away, European diplomats scribble at Ghent, aware that America's outrage now burns as fiercely as its capital once did. Humiliation, it turns out, can temper iron. When peace finally ink dries, Washington is still the seat of government. Charred, yes, but unabandoned, a phoenix skulking beneath scaffolds. Breathe in the damp charcoal air and feel the lesson settle. Overconfidence invites the torch, delay invites disgrace. Yet resolve can coax a capital from ashes, provided its citizens decide the story will continue. The breeze that rattles half-framed windows carries both soot and seed. What grows next depends on who shows up with hammer, vote, and memory. You step through smoke that still smells of charred papers and half-melted marble, and what you hear first isn't wailing, it's hammers. Nails bite new beams, trowels slap fresh mortar, and the ruined capital of a young republic decides, almost overnight, that survival is a craft. Congress huddles inside the spare rooms of the Patent Office, rain leaking through cracked plaster while lawmakers argue beside stacks of salvaged blueprints. Someone jokes that invention now includes rebuilding your own seat of government. Across town, a squat brick warehouse rises to host the next session. Locals nickname it the Old Brick Capital, as if the title alone can steady national nerves. Architect Benjamin Henry Latrobe returns, pockets full of stronger sketches. Stoneworkers, free men and enslaved alike, chisel char stains from the Capitol's columns, then set harder sandstone in their place. Over on Pennsylvania Avenue, masons coat the president's scorched mansion in thick whitewash, hiding wounds beneath a gleam so bright people start calling it, almost reverently, the White House. Every brushstroke whispers the same vow: burn us once, but you will remember what rises. Flames, oddly, fuse quarrels. Federalists who once mocked the war now bite their tongues. Dissent feels perilous when you can still see the sky through the Capitol's roof. Preachers thunder that God spared the city with a hurricane. Editors answer with editorials sharper than bayonets. Shame is real, but so is the fresh current of defiance. If Washington was a slap, the country is already drawing back its fist. Baltimore knows it is next. By September, the harbor bristles. 10,000 citizens dig trenches under muggy moons, packing earth with anything that will harden. Oyster shells, broken bricks, sheer willpower. Children fetch water, enslaved men swing pickaxes. Merchants shut their shops to haul lumber up to Fort McHenry's ramparts. You can smell tar and river mud, hear the heartbeat of drums echo across makeshift palisades. The British arrive confident. Why not? Washington folded like wet parchment. Major General Robert Ross, hero of the Capitol raid, leads a land column. Admiral Cochrane's ships slide into the Patapsco ready to crush forts by sunset. But Baltimore answers differently. Sharpshooters hiding behind split-rail fences drop Ross before noon, one bullet rewriting the invasion plan. On the water, British rockets arc crimson over Fort McHenry for 25 shuddering hours. Explosions so near the garrison that walls tremble like vertebrae. Yet the fort never signals surrender. Night smells of powder and salt. Soldiers crouch behind cannons, whispering prayers that taste of iron. Out in the harbor, an American lawyer named Francis Scott Key watches the bombardment from a captive ship, counting blasts, wondering if dawn will reveal a white flag. Dawn does come, slow, gray, hesitant, then wind snaps smoke aside. And there it is, a new flag, 30 by 40 feet, unfurling over the fort's battered stones like a dare. No silence on the British decks now, only stunned officers realizing guns and rockets failed to bend a city that finished its trenches with kitchen spoons. Key feels words tumble faster than heartbeats, scribbling lines on the back of an envelope. He tries to net the sensation of that vast banner shrugging off cannon fire. The verses begin as questions. Oh say, can you see? They land as proof that a republic, still bruised from its own hubris, has found something unburnable. News races upriver, over pikes and plank roads. Baltimore stands. Washington will rise. Suddenly the war is no longer a footnote. It is a forge. Farmers volunteer, militias drill, and President Madison, once dismissed as timid, looks taller beneath the smoke-stained dome he swore to rebuild. You breathe in, tasting soot and wet plaster, and you know the question has flipped. The issue isn't whether this fledgling nation can be broken. The Capitol already burned. The real test is whether its people can turn ruins into rallying cries, whether they can hammer disgrace into armor. Listen to the hammers. They're still ringing. You stand in the hush after the storm, soot still clinging to broken cornices, and feel the city exhale. The worst is over, yet the air crackles with something electric, resolve. Washington's black-ribbed skeleton might have screamed failure to every foreign envoy who cared to look, but ordinary Americans stared at the wreckage and saw blueprints. Bricklayers, freedmen, enslaved artisans, even schoolboys skipping arithmetic line up like ants on Pennsylvania Avenue. Every hammer blow is half carpentry, half heartbeat. We will not disappear. Congress, huddled inside the leaky patent office, votes to stay put. Not because the place is comfortable, but because running would taste of surrender. Across the way, masons slather lime over scorched sandstone until the president's house glows pale and defiant. Someone jokes the building looks so newly white that the nickname will stick. It does. That decision, to rebuild on the very ashes, rearranges the nation's self-portrait. Up to now, America has floated somewhere between boast and experiment, an unruly coalition held together by parchment and optimism. The torching of its capital pins the country to a single, unforgettable narrative beat. We got burned, and we stayed. Pride sprouts where timbers fell. Newsprint fans those seedlings into wildfire. Printers from Boston to Savannah swap caution for thunder. Sermons roar that Providence spared the Republic for larger duties. Tavern toasts claim the storm that doused the flames was heaven's wink. Even critics who once called the war Mr. Madison's folly mutter that perhaps a nation worth mocking is also a nation worth defending. Practical changes follow the poetry. Congress pours money into coastal forts, a standing army, a navy that can patrol more than local harbors. What began as frantic sandbagging in Baltimore becomes a systematic shield. Brick star forts, new foundries, an officer training academy no one will ever again neglect. Military readiness, once an afterthought, becomes policy, because humiliation is a harsh tutor. Culture shifts, too. A lawyer watching rockets over Fort McHenry scribbles lines about dawn and a stubborn flag. School children are soon reciting them under creaking rafters. Dolly Madison's portrait rescue rewrites her from hostess to legend. Socialites mimic her poise, newspapers praise her grit. The singed city morphs into myth, and myth seeps into identity. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the empire that lit the match tries to file the episode under necessary war measures and move on. British papers celebrate the destruction, then quietly change the subject when it fails to force concessions at Ghent. The very efficiency of the raid backfires. It proves you can smash America's facade but not its backbone. Diplomats who once demanded buffer states and Great Lakes real estate walk those points back. Peace emerges not because one side triumphs, but because continued war promises only ruinous stalemate. When the treaty ink dries, no acreage changes hands, no reparations change pockets. Yet something intangible has shifted. The United States is still small, still fractious, but a fresh sense of us now hangs over the smoldered columns. People who formerly identified first by state, Virginian, New Yorker, Carolinian, start testing a new word on their tongues. American. It tastes of smoke and stubbornness, but also of possibility. You can measure that change in smaller moments. A Vermont farmer writes to his cousin in Georgia and speaks of our victory at New Orleans, even though neither of them fired a shot. A Philadelphia merchant invests in a textile mill because if Britain can blockade ports, industry must bloom at home. Western settlers pushing past the Appalachians imagine the flag as both shield and invitation, not just distant decoration. The scars never vanish. Walk the rebuilt corridors and you still catch faint whiffs of char beneath the fresh paint. But the nation learns to wear them like medals. In taverns and parades, the story is retold. They burned our house and we rebuilt it grander. Memory turns trauma into fuel. Children grow up hearing that the Capitol Dome once framed the stars, open to wind and rain, and they vow nothing under that roof will ever be so vulnerable again. So, as night slips over the Potomac and work lights flicker along half-finished colonnades, you understand the paradox. The blaze meant to break the Republic instead soldered its fragments tighter. What the British kindled in August 1814 was not merely a fire, it was a forge. Out of it stepped a country a little older, a little harder, and newly convinced that, however imperfect, it could survive the worst its enemies, or its own miscalculations, could unleash. Breathe that in as you drift toward sleep. Ruin transmuted into resolve, ash pressed into cornerstone, humiliation rewired as heritage. The hammers keep ringing in the distance, steady as a heartbeat, promising that by dawn another stone will be set, another crack sealed, and the story, your story, will march one chapter farther from flame. You slide beneath the blankets, candlelight pooling on the ceiling, and feel the hush before a story begins. One stitched with lullabies and the steady drum of danger. In the Middle Ages, a girl's road to motherhood often opened while her childhood shoes were still soft. Her village, her parish, her king, and, most insistently, her kin expected that body of hers to ripen, conceive, and deliver, preferably sons who could swing scythes or swords. Choice, as you know it, hadn't yet learned to pronounce itself. Destiny arrived with a dowry list. Among peasants, the matchmakers were practical. Who owns the adjacent grazing strip? Who brews decent ale? Who still smiles with most teeth intact? Nobles, meanwhile, treated daughters like carved chess pieces. A treaty here, a border clarified there, and a 12-year-old bride whispered vows she scarcely understood. Once the wedding hearth cooled, an invisible hourglass overturned. If no pregnancy followed within a year or two, gossip sprouted like thistles. Was the wife cursed, lazy, secretly sinful? A barren noblewoman risked annulment. A barren farm wife risked starvation in old age. The womb was never private. It was national infrastructure wrapped in linen. When pregnancy finally quickened, celebration braided itself with dread. Every swelling belly was a gamble. The birth could secure a dynasty, replenish a labor force, or end in shrouds stitched for mother, child, or both. Theology offered little comfort. Church sermons traced labor pains straight to Eve's impulsive bite, so suffering was framed as holy interest on ancestral debt. Cry too loudly and neighbors might murmur that you argued with God. Labor unfolded in a cocoon of women. Midwives, part herbalist, part priestess, part crisis manager, took command inside low-roofed rooms smelling of sweat, beeswax, and rue. Men were shooed out like curious goats. Loud prayers tangled with soft curses as grandmothers tightened belts across aching hips, promising, just a little longer, dove. Pain relief hid in plants. Poppy syrup, henbane smoke, mastication of bitter mandrake. Sometimes it dulled the edge. Sometimes it marched mother and child closer to St. Peter. Charms fluttered everywhere. A strip of parchment inked with the Magnificat dangled from the rafters. The girdle of St. Margaret, essentially a holy belt, was looped around the laboring belly, believed to guard against breach or bleeding. When the baby crowned, the midwife crossed herself before the final tug, then murmured a psalm while tying the cord with red yarn to frighten unfriendly spirits. Yet spirits weren't the most dangerous presence. Infection was. One unwashed hand, one soiled sheet, could summon puerperal fever that burned hotter than childbirth ever dared. Statistics, if anyone had counted, would have chilled the stoutest monk. Roughly 1 woman in 10 never rose from the birthing stool, and infants fared only slightly better. Stillbirths, premature lungs, winter fevers, each claimed tiny lives like coins from a purse. For households that did coax a child into healthy cries, relief felt biblical. Baptism followed within hours, sometimes minutes, because souls were believed fragile travelers. Should death revisit before the priest, heaven's gate might stay shut. None of this grit erased tenderness. Medieval art, that kaleidoscope of gold and grime, shows husbands touching wives' swollen hands, mothers nursing by firelight, toddlers toddling behind plows. Love threaded through obligation. A husband might pace outside, counting contractions like enemy drums. A wife might stitch swaddling clothes between planting and harvest, humming hope into every seam. And if a woman's body refused to conceive, remedies blurred science and superstition. Amulets carved with symbols of saint and rested under pillows. Decoctions of dill, fennel, plus a suspicious dose of powdered antler promised to warm the womb. For men, fewer prescriptions existed. Failure was often folded back on the wife. Yet some texts whispered of strengthening tonics. Spiced wine, ground ram's horn, vigorous prayer. The paradox glows here in the half-light. Society exalted motherhood as salvation and sentenced women to bear its risks alone. Childbirth was both battlefield and altar. Each scream an echo of Eve, each newborn's wail a trumpet of hope. When midnight grows quiet around you, imagine that small chamber. A rush-strewn floor, a single tallow candle bending shadows, a circle of women holding their breath as new life slips wet and slippery into trembling hands. Hear the exhausted laugh, the thanks offered to saints, the swift, terrified glance to be sure the baby moves. Breathe slow. The story is old, but the heartbeat inside it is familiar. Fear woven with purpose, pain braided to love, survival staked on courage no battlefield ever demanded of men in quite the same way. Let that courage cradle you as your eyes drift. Outside, modern monitors beep and LEDs glow. Yet somewhere, under stars unchanged since medieval rooftops, another mother grips a stranger's hand and steps into that same ancient river of risk and miracle. Sleep now. The candle gutters out, but the tale lingers, warm as swaddling and stern as stone. And tomorrow, when you stir, we'll open another door in history's long hallway, always mindful of the women who built it one breath, one birth, one unrecorded heroism at a time. You step into a candlelit great hall and feel the weight of every single gaze turned toward one person, the young duchess whose flat stomach is being judged more intensely than the wine. In noble Europe, motherhood wasn't applause after romance. It was the whole political score. Your womb, if you'd been born to velvet and heraldry, was a treasury vault. Produce heirs and the crown's future jingles safely. Fail and the hinges screech. From the moment a girl's marriage contract was sealed, often before her voice lost its childlike lilt, courtiers began counting moons. Pregnancy tests took the form of gossip. Did she refuse the roasted mutton? Did the seamstress let out the bodice? After 12 quiet cycles, murmurs sharpened. Was she somehow spiritually tarnished? Was the king, whisper it, defective? Either answer could topple alliances stitched across borders. When a sun finally stirred beneath layers of brocade, the jubilation felt less like nursery decorating and more like securing a fortress. Heralds rode out with proclamations. Churches rang bells. Yet the mother's real labor was only opening act. She might not nurse the child herself. Wet nurses handled that, but she orchestrated everything. Selecting tutors versed in statecraft, approving heraldry lessons before the boy could read, drilling courtesy into daughters destined to charm foreign courts. She became head strategist in a game played on cribs and treaties. But the chessboard cut both ways. Queens who birthed only daughters watched courtiers' smiles thin. Some husbands quietly petitioned Rome for annulments, citing barrenness. Others imported mistresses flaunting proof of fertility, gurgling infants born out of wedlock yet paraded like living accusations. A royal bed could feel colder than a battlefield. Not every noble mother stayed meek beneath her wimples. Eleanor of Aquitaine spun sons into kings, then marched armies when they disobeyed. Margaret of Anjou strapped on armor to guard her child's crown. Isabella of France toppled a reigning husband in her boy's name. Behind courtly dances, these women pulled diplomatic strings so taut they could slice. Even triumph tasted metallic. A child crowned young might attract poisoners. A teen prince could die jousting. Smallpox cared little about royal linen. Mothers drafted prayer lists longer than battle plans, sent relics to chapels, financed alms in a desperate barter with fate. When death won, as it often did, there was no mourning leave. A queen draped in black still sat in council by dawn, eyes red but quill steady, because succession intrigues pause for no grief. Yet tenderness survived inside tapestried chambers. Letters from queens to children, ink blotted by candle drips, begged them to eat broth, study virtue, mind the chill drafts. One duchess tucked miniature shirts she embroidered herself into diplomatic trunks sailing for her daughter's distant wedding. Love threaded through the politics, defiant and private. Picture her tonight, a crown slipping as she paces the nursery, counting her child's breaths while assassins' rumors flit outside like bats. Hear the lullaby she hums, steady, low, trying to drown the court's clamor. In that hush lies the truth. Beneath jeweled circlets beat hearts as frantic, as fragile, as any peasant mother's. So drift now with that image. Empires rose or cracked on these quiet, sleepless vigils. And every time a royal infant wailed, an entire kingdom exhaled or trembled. Let the realization settle as your breathing slows. Sometimes the fiercest battles of the Middle Ages were fought not with lances and mud, but with courage in a dim chamber, where a woman listened for the future in a newborn's heartbeat and swore the world would not silence it. You tilt closer to the hearth glow and let the room fall away until only one figure remains. A medieval mother, sleeves rolled, hair escaping its kerchief, a newborn tucked to her breast while steam from the cauldron curls around both of them like a soft, doubtful halo. In this world, her world, Motherhood is not a chapter. It is every page, written in milk, sweat, and the small noises children make when they dream. For a peasant woman, pregnancy begins almost before childhood ends. She marries in her mid-teens because the village needs alliances, extra hands, and a cradle filled before winter bites. Conception is not a romantic milestone. It is Tuesday. There is no linen and lace announcement, only a mist moon and the neighbor's knowing nod. Contraception? The priest thunders against it, and the hedgerow herbs whispered about by older women work only as often as fate allows. So the pattern sets. Plant seed, feel seed quicken, bring life into a cottage that already echoes with coughs and chores. Birth is battle. No physician strides in with polished instruments. Instead, a midwife arrives with calloused hands, a pouch of rue and comfrey, and prayers to Saint Margaret clenched between cracked lips. The house is dim, the rushes on the floor still damp from last night's rain. A laboring cry curls into the rafters, but walls are thin and modesty thinner. If the babe presents wrong, if bleeding starts, if fever slips in afterward, death stands in the doorway with terrible patience. 1 woman in 10 will not see spring, and still she pushes because there is no retreat on this front. When the infant finally slides into the world, slick and mewling, the midwife lifts him toward the smoky light, murmuring the first words he will ever hear, a blessing and a warning. Quickly, water is fetched for an emergency baptism. Not ceremony but insurance, a spiritual passport should the child draw only a handful of breaths. The mother watches with eyes already clouded by exhaustion, wondering whether the tiny chest will keep rising. Half of these children will not reach 5 summers. She has buried too many to pretend otherwise. Work resumes before the cord stump falls off. The next morning she ties the baby to her back with a strip of worn wool and heads to the fields. Wheat must be weeded. Goats must be coaxed from thorny hillsides. Every hour or so she kneels, loosens the cloth, and guides a searching mouth to her breast. The milk is life and, mercifully, a brief break on fertility, nature's slim concession to her weary bones. Toddlerhood arrives quickly. Little hands collect kindling, little feet stamp grain husks, little bellies grumble beside hers when harvests fail. Yet love pulses through the drudgery. She sings in a dialect no scholar will ever record. Nonsense verses about bright birds and faithful saints. At night she rubs onion salve on fevered foreheads, trades her only cloak for a spoon of honey to soothe a cough, and tells stories about knights who slay winter itself. Each small act is a vow. I will keep you warm, I will keep you fed, I will keep death waiting at the gate as long as I can. Shift your gaze to the manor on the hill. Inside silk-hung chambers, another mother paces. She never lifted a plow, but copper-haired maids whisper that her back is bent by heavier loads. Dynastic expectation. She has survived childbirth 3 times, miracle enough, but only the eldest son breathes tonight, and the king eyes her still flat belly with political impatience. Courtiers count months the way vintners count casks. She does not nurse her children. That task belongs to a wet nurse paid in coins and quiet devotion. Court physicians insist a queen must recover quickly, regain her color, and most importantly return to her husband's bed, so the next heir can be forged. Even so, she slips to the nursery at dawn, brushes fingers over downy cheeks, and hums the plain song her nurse once hummed to her. But policy stalks every tender moment. A cough in the prince's throat sends messengers galloping for holy relics. If he dies, alliances unravel like frayed tapestry threads. When plague rides the wind, the castle gates slam shut. Servants burn rosemary, nobles retreat to hunting lodges, and the queen kneels for vigils that last until her knees bleed. She commissions masses, sets bacon beside altars as paupers' alms, anything to bargain with heaven. If the child survives, the realm exhales. If not, she must swallow her tears before the next audience in the great hall. Nations cannot afford prolonged mourning, even from mothers. Wet nurses and nursery governesses shape these royal children, but it is the mother who plots marriages, hires tutors versed in Aristotle and etiquette, and whispers survival tactics through keyholes. Eleanor, Margaret, Isabella. Their names ripple across chronicles because they refuse to be decorative wombs. They forged treaties, launched rebellions, and shielded fragile heirs like hawks with jeweled talons. Behind every crowned boy stood a woman who had endured the same red pain as any milkmaid, then carried the weight of crowns atop scars that never fully closed. Across rank and region, one truth threads the centuries. Medieval motherhood is a calculus of risk. Each pregnancy stakes a life against death's loaded dice. Every lullaby is sung against the hiss of plague, famine, or war. And yet hope persists. Not the fragile hope of fairy tales, but a flint-hard determination. Grow, breathe, live. Children are the only harvest that matters more than grain. So, as your eyelids dip, imagine both mothers, peasant and princess, watching small chests rise and fall in firelight. One will wake before dawn to milk goats. The other will draft letters to distant courts. Both will count breaths, say prayers, and wonder which saint guards the thin thread between life and loss. Let that shared heartbeat lull you. A reminder that beneath mud or velvet, motherhood in the Middle Ages was an act of quiet, ferocious rebellion against a world forever poised to take back what it gave. Breathe with them once, twice, and drift, knowing the next story waits just beyond the candle's last flicker. You close your eyes and let the candle glow fade. In its place rises a small stone cottage, the air thick with wood smoke and whispered Ave Marias. Here motherhood isn't only blood and bone, it is pilgrimage. Every step from first flutter to final lullaby runs through the church's long, watchful fingers, and a woman's soul is weighed with every contraction she breathes through. Before her belly even rounds, she knots a ribbon bearing St. Margaret's name around her waist. Legend says the martyr cut herself free from a dragon's gut. Surely that saint can slice open danger in a birthing room. Each night she traces the knot and murmurs, "Guide me through the jaws." The midwife approves. Saints and stitches are all the tools she owns. Labor begins beneath a sagging thatch roof, thunder rolling outside like the growl of Eve's curse. Pain is not merely tolerated. It is expected, even applauded. Priests have reminded her since girlhood that childbirth pains are the toll for the first bite of forbidden fruit. Cry out too loudly and she risks whispers of weak faith. Bear it in silence and neighbors will say she has wrestled sin itself. When the agony crests, she clenches a small wooden token carved with a dragon and feels St. Margaret standing beside her, invisible but solid as oak. The moment the infant slips free, the midwife doesn't wait for the cord to cool. She grabs a chipped bowl, scoops rainwater from the barrel, and baptizes on the spot, just in case the tiny lungs rest before a priest can be fetched. Limbo is a terror none wish to test. Only once holy names seal the fragile spirit does the room exhale. 40 days later, the young mother steps back into the parish church for her churching. The priest sprinkles holy water across her bowed head, declaring her purified, yet the ritual carries a polite accusation. Childbirth has stained her, and only the church may scrub the blot away. She smiles, accepts the blessing, and pretends not to notice the unspoken rebuke. At least she may sing at Mass again. Night after night she lays protective lattices over the cradle. Dried rue bundles, rosemary garlands, and a crescent-shaped iron knife tucked beneath straw to frighten fairies hunting unguarded souls. She whispers 2 names for her baby, one public for parish records, another secret only angels hear, confusing any spiteful spirit that might come prowling. If fever steals the child anyway, she will scrape a cross in coal on the lintel, sweep the ashes toward the door, and begin her prayers anew. Point the instrument at the Milky Way and the pale gauze shreds into tens of thousands of pinpoint suns. Each, you realize, another sun like ours, not divine haze. Aim at Jupiter and 4 tiny sparks parade around it, obedient moons choreographing an unmistakable truth. Earth is not the cosmic pivot. Planets can have their own retinue. Shift to Venus and watch its bright disk wax and wane like our moon. Proof it orbits the sun, not us. The very sky, once heralded as unchanging crystal, reveals itself as busy, bruised, imperfect, alive. You know the implications the moment the eyepiece cools against your cheek. These glass circles have turned theology into geometry, faith into trigonometry. But before controversy ignites, you exploit a performer's instinct. Haul your telescope to the highest campanile and invite Venetian senators, silk merchants, skeptical monks to peer inside. Let them gasp at crater shadows, at satellites flickering beside Jupiter's belt, at the sudden abundance of stars where empty darkness used to be. Their wonder is your armor. Public astonishment buys precious time. Still, the Church does not trade wonder for doctrine. Cardinals murmur about arrogance, whisper that a lens may distort God's design, accuse mathematics of breeding heresy. Your findings sprint ahead in ink, Sidereus Nuncius, the starry messenger, condensed revelations that travel Europe faster than you can sail its coasts. Copernicus, long shelved as speculative, now finds muscular evidence in your sketches. Friends greet you as a trailblazer. Enemies brand you an anarchist with polished glass. But beneath the politics, something quieter thrums. The telescope has cracked open possibility itself. Armies want it for early warning on the horizon, mariners for plotting safer routes past hidden shoals, philosophers for proof that the mind can reach where feet cannot, and craftsmen from Naples to Nuremberg scramble to copy your design, each improvement multiplying reach, each new pair of lenses peeling another layer from the heavens. Within a single winter, the cosmos shifts from mural to map. Yet none of that future noise compares to the private hush of discovery. You, alone on a Tuscan balcony, stars bright enough to cast weak shadows, hearing only your pulse while a bead of starlight slides across the field of view. In that instant you finally grasp what all those forgotten lens grinders, Arab opticians, and Venetian glassblowers unwittingly prepared. A simple tube can dismantle certainty. The universe does not need permission to be stranger than Scripture. It merely waits for someone stubborn enough to sharpen the focus. So rest now, eyes dazzled, mind wide. Tomorrow inquisitors may summon you, printers may pirate your diagrams, rival scientists may quarrel over credit, but none can unsee what the lenses have shown. The moon will still bear its craters, Jupiter its moons, Venus its phases, and the Milky Way its ocean of suns. You have stretched human sight past the old frontier, turning a novelty toy into a revelation engine. History will hammer out the consequences. Tonight, let the quiet sky feel newly, thrillingly incomplete, and know you helped unlock the first hinge. You lean over the workbench, candlelight trembling across scraps of polished metal, and wonder how many rainbows a single lens can ruin. For years you've watched the long tube refractors of Europe stretch like spears into the night, endless timber scaffolds, ropes, pulleys, and still those prismatic wounds. Purple ghosts around Jupiter, saffron halos haunting the moon. The brighter the target, the louder the smear. Tonight you decide the sky deserves better. So you stop bending glass and start shaping starlight with mirrors. A scrap of speculum metal, copper kissed with tin, becomes your canvas. You grind it in hypnotic circles, water and rouge turning the surface to mercury. Hours pass. Your shoulders ache. At last, the disc curves just enough to coax parallel beams to a single, obedient point. No prism, no color split, just a tiny white spark. Now the real gamble. Redirect that converging light sideways so your skull isn't in the way. A small flat mirror, tilted 45 degrees, catches the hidden focus and slides it toward an eyepiece near the tube's mouth. The result looks odd, almost playful, short, squat, nothing like the proud spears at royal observatories. You lift it anyway, hold your breath, and invite Orion to step inside. Snap. The hunter appears razor clean, each star a pin, no violet bruise at the edge. Betelgeuse burns true red, Rigel icy white. The color stays where nature put it. Moonlight floods the field next, craters crisp as frost. You blink twice, half expecting the old rainbow ghosts, but they are gone, exiled behind the silvery curve of your mirror. Word spreads faster than solder cools. Scholars arrive skeptical and leave quiet, counting craters under their breath. They nickname your creation a reflector, but the real reflection is philosophical. If a pocket-sized tube outperforms yard-long giants, what else about the universe might shrink or warp under fresh vision? Merchants sniff profit. A compact telescope a soldier can sling over a saddle. A captain can mount on a deck rail. Artisans copy your design. some with honest zeal, others cutting corners that turn Saturn's rings to smudges. You don't mind. Progress, like light, bounces where it must. But perfection is a moving horizon. Polishing metal steals months and tarnishes in days. Soon French experimenters coat glass with silver. Scottish tinkerers toy with parabolic curves. Each generation files another whisper off the blur until, 3 centuries hence, a mountaintop leviathan will collect galaxies in a honeycomb of mirrors, all of it descended from the disk you spin tonight by candlelight. For now, savor the hush. Outside, December frost scabs the fields. Inside, your small mirror cups eternity. You have trimmed the heavens of their chromatic scars, given astronomers a manageable blade, and whispered to every curious soul that the night is clearer than it appears. Rest your tired wrists, wipe the rouge from your fingers, and let Orion keep watch through the workshop window. Tomorrow the sky will still be there, sharper, steadier, and just a little closer, because you dared to swap glass for polished starlight and proved that even rainbows can be re-engineered. You press one hand against the cool iron railing and feel the century shift beneath your fingertips. Steam whistles in the valley, telegraph wires hum overhead, and suddenly the humble telescope, once a candlelit toy of monks and artisans, has grown into a beast of smokestack ambition. Factories now cast tubes longer than cottages, mirrors the width of cottage doors, and every rivet in the metal seems to thrum with one demand: see farther. Across the Irish Midlands, you picture the 3rd Earl of Ross pacing his estate, pockets jingling with industrial capital and cosmic impatience. William Parsons is done squinting through library spyglasses. He wants a cannon aimed at eternity. So masons raise twin stone walls like castle towers, ironworkers forge a cradle big enough for a whale, and in 1845 the Leviathan of Parsonstown yawns awake. 6 feet of speculum mirror, 50 feet of barrel, a siege engine pointed at Orion. Climb the wooden stairs in your mind. The night smells of fern and coal soot. Ropes creak as the great tube tilts, and the mirror, freshly polished, darker than ink, swallows starlight whole. Parsons peers through the side eyepiece and sketches what no eye has nailed down before. The whirlpool nebula revealed as a spiraling pinwheel, not a formless smudge. One drawing, and the vocabulary of the universe changes from clouds to islands, from nebulae to potential galaxies. Back in England, Caroline and William Herschel's legacy still echoes. Uranus spinning at the edge of maps, star clusters numbered like census rolls. Yet even their 40-foot reflector feels quaint next to Parsons' Leviathan. Scale has become an obsession. Paris, Greenwich, Berlin, each observatory races to weld more iron, pour bigger mirrors, grind longer flint-crown lenses for the new achromatic refractors that tame rainbows without needing Newton's silvered tricks. Nations boast of aperture the way navies boast of cannon caliber. But building giants uncovers fresh headaches. Metal mirrors tarnish overnight. A single Irish fog can dim the Leviathan for months. Air currents inside mammoth tubes ripple images like heat above a forge. Engineers answer with ventilation shutters, ice-cold polishing rooms, even heated domes that breathe like lungs to keep glass and air in thermal truce. Every solved riddle births a new one, and progress marches on steam-driven legs. You feel the psychological shift, too. Telescopes have escaped the attic and the garden. They now stand on public budgets and imperial pride. Charting Jupiter's belts isn't just scholarship. It guides maritime chronometers, maps colonial seas, underwrites insurance for cargoes halfway around the globe. One good transit timing can save a fleet from reef and ruin. The sky has become both laboratory and ledger. Yet beneath the iron and nationalism, curiosity still beats. Somewhere a village blacksmith stays late, filing brass gears for a backyard equatorial mount. A schoolteacher saves wages for a pocket achromat to show pupils Saturn's rings. Those delicate hoops Herschel once saw quiver like silver sawdust. The universe is widening for kings and cobblers alike, each lens, big or small, another passport beyond earthly soot. So breathe in the coal-tinged night. Listen to rivets ping as they cool, to steam hammers pounding out the next generation of stargazing limbs. The Leviathan rests between its masonry walls like a slumbering dragon, mirror tilted toward a cluster you have yet to name. Tomorrow, builders will sketch even grander designs, double-barreled refractors in Ohio cornfields, silver-on-glass reflectors atop Chilean peaks. But tonight belongs to the first true titan of industry-forged astronomy. Let that image drift with you towards sleep. A 50-foot tube swaying gently under Irish stars, a lone astronomer tracing whirlpools of light older than stone, and the quiet promise that every rivet, every grind of glass, pulls the unknown a little closer to human eyes. Close yours now. The furnaces bank low, the gears rest, and beyond the workshop roofs the constellations wait, patient and unafraid of our climbing ladders of iron and polished dream. You ease deeper beneath the blanket, let the room dim to star gray, and imagine a slow elevator ride through history. Wooden spyglasses at the bottom, gold-rimmed space mirrors at the top. Feel the cage hum upward. Just above the 19th century floor, gears still clank around Lord Ross's Leviathan, its 6-foot mirror wet with Irish dew. But the lift keeps climbing, stopping next on Mount Wilson, California. Step out. The air is pine-sharp, the Hooker telescope looms like a steam locomotive pointed at Orion, and a lanky astronomer named Edwin Hubble is squinting into a 100-inch eye that belongs to the universe itself. One night in 1923, he spots a faint pulse, a Cepheid variable, in the Andromeda Nebula. The math clicks, and your chest does too. Andromeda isn't fog in our backyard. It's an island galaxy millions of light-years away. The cosmos just blew its own borders. Back into the elevator up. Earth's atmosphere now feels more like a problem than protection. Engineers redraw the plan. If air smears starlight, send the telescope above the air. In 1990, the doors open on low Earth orbit, and the Hubble Space Telescope drifts past like a silver koi in black water. Early on, its mirror is minutely misshapen, human hubris floating at 17,000 miles per hour. Yet astronauts fit it with corrective optics the way a jeweler resets a gem. Then come the pictures. Tendrils of gas-birthing stars in the Eagle Nebula, stormy stripes on Jupiter, galaxies caught mid-collision like frozen fireworks. Every new frame erases another centimeter of human loneliness. But vision is more than visible light. Ride higher still into wavelengths the eye never learned to name. At Arecibo, a concrete bowl listens for whispers older than language. In New Mexico, the very large array of radio dishes swivels in desert silence, turning hydrogen fog into cartographic symphonies. Infrared observatories pick their way through cosmic dust. X-ray detectors trace the screams of matter spiraling into black holes. Each band of the spectrum, a fresh dialect of the same ancient conversation. Yet even Hubble has limits. The elevator doors glide open one last time to reveal a gold-petaled flower unfolding beyond the moon's orbit. The James Webb Space Telescope. Its 18 hexagonal mirrors form a honeycomb big enough to trap the faint heat of newborn galaxies. Cooling systems hush it to 230 degrees C, because warmth would drown the whispers Webb is desperate to hear. Already it has spotted galaxies so distant their light left when the universe was still figuring out how to spell hydrogen. Soon it may read the atmospheres of exoplanets, tasting them for water, methane, maybe something stranger and breathable. Select Pause on the control panel. Look down the shaft you've ridden. Galileo's shaky tube, Kepler's flipped image refractor, Newton's mirror that canceled rainbows, Parsons' Leviathan of wrought iron wonder, Hubble's glass docking with vacuum, Webb's origami gold sailing sunward. The pattern is simple. Whenever we reach the edge of sight, someone asks, what if we build bigger, colder, higher? And the universe answers with more questions. Breathe slow. Picture that honeycomb mirror catching photons older than Earth's first oceans. Picture Edwin Hubble brushing chalk from his sleeve after proving the Milky Way is just one address on a city map of galaxies. Picture an engineer in a clean room checking a seam of beryllium while a playlist hums quietly through static-free speakers. All of them, and now you, share the same quiet instinct. Look up, then lean forward. Let that instinct cradle you while eyelids drift. The elevator hum fades, the machinery of curiosity never stops, and above the roof tonight, above clouds, stratosphere, and planetary pride, a fleet of telescopes keeps watch, transforming ancient starlight into stories we can hold. Rest knowing that while you sleep, mirrors larger than dreams are gathering the faintest glimmers of creation, waiting to whisper them back when morning comes.